Hello to all of you wonderful moms out there. This is episode 82 of Achieve Your Ambitious Mom Life. I'm your host, Anoki Kapasi, and I'm here to help you envision, plan, and take action on your big ideas so you can create impact at home and at work. Well, today we're diving into how to implement systems that actually stick. In 4 simple steps, you can move from feeling overwhelmed to actually getting things done using systems. I am helping you implement and make your systems more effective today. When you combine parts 1, 2, 3, and today's episode from the Systems Explained series, you'll be able to launch a simple system that's going to work for you even on your worst days when you're running on coffee fumes and sheer willpower. If you've already built systems, but you really struggle to use them consistently, to get them initiated and implement them, then this episode is really going to help you get off of that struggle bus because the strategies that I'm sharing today are really straightforward. So I hope you see this episode as a kind of tutorial for sustainable change using systems. Are you looking for a way to blend success and motherhood without losing sight of who you are? I get it. I've been there too. Hi, I'm Anoki, a PhD researcher, business owner, and homeschooling mom of 2 boys. As your life coach, I help moms like you create a life you love at home and at work. If you're ready to stop feeling overwhelmed, overscheduled, and overlooked, and want a clear roadmap to a balanced life, a meaningful career, and finally feeling like yourself again while being the awesome mama that you are, you're in the right place. In this journey to create the life you truly desire, it's time to rediscover your dreams and achieve your ambitious mom life. Hi, this is a quick reminder to sign up for the free Solve for Mom Insiders newsletter. This is where I continue to share deep insights on how to keep up with your personal ambitions and find some independence towards these new skills that you're trying to build. I let you in behind the scenes of how I'm doing this with my fledgling business and even in my own family. How I'm maintaining family time while I get to pursue my various goals and passion projects. It is jam-packed with personal growth tips, journal prompts, resources, and opportunities to interact. Very soon, when you sign up, you will be the first to know about some special offers. So if you love the podcast, you will not want to miss out on this newsletter, which shows up in your inbox only twice a month. So don't miss out. Check the link in the show notes below and sign up now. Today's episode is all about implementing systems effectively. But none of this is really going to matter or even make sense if you haven't heard the first 3 parts to the Systems Explained series. So I would highly recommend that you go back and just start from the beginning and listen to those episodes. I will have them all linked in the show notes and then come on back over and listen to this episode. Okay, now that you have the first 3 episodes under your belt, let's start with understanding that building systems isn't about perfection. I've talked a little bit about that already. What we want is something that's good enough to launch. Having a system to start with is going to immediately reduce your mental load. And so that's why in the last episode, part 3, I really emphasized building the simplest possible version that's still going to deliver some value to you. So for example, if meal planning is overwhelming to you, then you don't need to start with a fully color-coded monthly plan that has perfectly balanced, nutritious meals. Instead, just start with a single sheet, 5 go-to favorite dinners, and maybe a grocery list that goes along with each of those meals. That's enough to get you through 1 week of meal planning. That's really simple. So not perfect, but good enough. And then each time or each week that you use it, just take an extra 5 to 10 minutes to refine and shore up the system. Eventually you can transfer it over to a calendar system or some sort of automated system, maybe an app that manages meal planning. Essentially, you want to start and don't overwhelm yourself by feeling like you have to have everything figured out at the beginning. So let me give you a tiny example. When I was building my home management system, it really just started off as a checklist. It was really enough to just get it started, and I was able to gain control of some of the chaos and some of the mess in my house. So the first part of implementation of a system is to work on the start, making sure the start is low resistance and that you just actually start. Okay, so the second area that I want you to focus on is how to run your new system effectively. Once you've launched your system, that is basically the next challenge. Now, I already told you that it doesn't have to start off perfect because you're going to have opportunities to refine it. So one way to make sure that it's running consistently is to have your triggers well defined. You want to make sure that you know when and where in your schedule you're going to be running your system. But if you followed my 4F framework for building systems in part 3, then you are going to already know and have defined your triggers. And I would say time block it if you need to. Now, in the beginning, it really helps to have some sort of checklist or template or document that you can refer to every single time. Even when you think you sort of know it, the more you use it, you are going to eventually know it and maybe even have it memorized. But our brains are kind of wired to take shortcuts. And so if you want to build consistency, then you have to be exposed to your system in so many different ways. You have to see it, do it, read about it, hear it. So having this document to refer to is one more way to just reinforce what you know about your system and have all the steps kind of down. Obviously, the whole point of the system is that eventually you can outsource all of that sort of thinking about the next steps. But it really does help for you to get familiar with the steps, because eventually when you want to refine things, you're going to want to know where and how you can refine them. And that requires you understanding and knowing each of the steps. Now, I've read a lot of different things about habit formation, and different sources seem to report different lengths of time before something becomes a habit, and it also seems to vary for different demographics. So don't quote me on this, but what sticks out in my memory right now is that on average, it takes like 7 continuous days for a new habit to form, and over, I think, like 20 exposures before you're willing to expend any resources, especially finances. And then something like over 2 months of consistent contact with that habit for the habit to then become automatic. And so using explicit checklists and things of that sort could potentially speed up the process. Going back to my example of a home management system, to make sure that I was going to use it consistently, I had to know which chores on there are meant to be done daily, which ones are meant to be done weekly, and then monthly. So I started to stratify my chores that way, and then I got all the chores into my calendar. I established a color coding system, and I made sure that I had certain time blocks set aside just to get things done in my house. And then I was able to share my system with my kids so then they had easy access to their daily chores. And because of this, I've been able to use this system very consistently. As part of implementing systems, we have to refine them. In the beginning, each iteration, you're going to notice things and you're going to want to change them. And this refinement is really the key to the long-term success of your system, because with each real-world use, you are making it better. So it's going to become more and more useful to you. Probably in the first several weeks especially, you're going to want to deliberately evaluate what's working and what's not. I think that probably has the steepest curve in terms of making changes. Over time, you're going to have less and less to change. So you don't have to maybe evaluate it as strongly at that point. In the beginning, especially after each run of your system, you want to quickly note a couple things. Are there any friction points that made it really hard to use? Are there any steps that you skipped or you had to modify when you were using the system? Were there any wins or benefits that you experienced by using the system? This evaluation doesn't have to be elaborate. It's just going to be a couple of notes that you take, or maybe even a sticky note, or just a mental note if you can manage that. I really like to write things down, and more often than not, when it comes to systems, I will make the change immediately. I would like you to focus on just changing one aspect of your system at a time, because it can get overwhelming. Sometimes the refinements may take a little more effort than the building. So take a note of what you want to change and then focus the change on one specific area. Now, the changes can be on things like maybe the tool you're using, maybe one step in the process. You might want to alter the timing or who's responsible for a certain step in the system. I think the mistake that most of us make is that we try to overhaul the whole entire system at once. And honestly, I think that it's going to get so overwhelming to do something like that. You might actually see the system as broken completely and you might abandon it. And I think that that would be a real pity if that happened. So when you have an imperfect system and you focus on improving just one part of it, you're going from imperfect to one step better, right? And that seems very manageable in my opinion. Now, I spoke a little bit about this in the last episode, but one thing you can do during refinement is kind of adding a fail-safe or recovery step. It's basically some instructions or a backup step that you're going to initiate if the system breaks down. And the reason that I think that this is important to think about is because if the system starts off imperfect, or if the situation changes, you're using it in a different scenario, let's say, then there's a potential that the system might not work as effectively or might even break down. And I'm talking about things like maybe you're sick or there's an emergency or you're just having one of those days, right? And so a sustainable system is going to include a clear path back when you've fallen off for any given reason. Now I want to quickly troubleshoot some of the common challenges when we're implementing systems. If you find yourself, for example, skipping your system regularly, then probably the first step is the problem. And it could be that the hump to initiating the system is too big, or maybe the trigger isn't obvious enough. In that case, you want to either make the first step smaller, or you want to make the trigger a little more visible, or do a better job of catching your attention. So for example, if your evening wind down system gets skipped repeatedly, you might want to habit stack. And so you might have a 2-minute task that you're already doing very consistently, and that'll be the trigger to initiating your bedtime wind down. For example, maybe your habit of plugging in your phone at night is going to be the trigger that helps you remember to start winding down for the night. If the problem seems to be that a family member is resisting using the systems, well, maybe you need to spend a little more time clarifying with them why that system is important and what it's going to change. What are the stakes if the system isn't in action, right? Or maybe it's overwhelming for them and you need to simplify it even further. Perhaps you can even have them involved in refining or further building out of the system. When people kind of have a vested interest, they have some sense of ownership in creating something, then they are more willing to be a part of the process. If your system starts off strong, but then you're finding that over time it just kind of gradually drifts away, then maybe you need to do a little bit of retrofitting and switch out one of the friction points with something else. Usually there's a specific step that's causing a breakdown of this type. And so if you are paying attention and evaluating things, you'll probably be able to identify that with relative ease. So when I started my project of detoxing our home and going on this whole clean lifestyle, I actually adjusted the cleaning portion of my home management system, and I started to adjust that entire portion to using chemical-free products. I was finding that every time the chore came up, and let's say I needed to wipe down my windows, I'd realize, oh, I only have Windex. I don't know what I'm supposed to do in order to clean it without Windex. And so then I would skip that task. What I ended up doing was going through my entire system and figuring out what chemicals am I using, how can I substitute them with non-toxic versions. Then, when those chores came up, I started those tests without having to worry about whether it fit my new project of detoxing and clean living. At this point, my home management system is fully automated. I've been using it for many years now, and I haven't had to make too many adjustments unless I have something like a new project or a new lifestyle like clean living that I'm trying to accommodate. This is the same home management system that I now share with all of my clients so that they can take it and basically plug and play. And now let's look at how to scale your system so it creates even more impact over time. Scaling doesn't mean making your system more complicated. It's going to be a method for expanding the impact that a system can have in your life, but still maintaining its simplicity. So here are 4 tips that I'm going to share to help you scale your system effectively. First, it can help to have some sort of document. This is just a sort of plain language version of your system. Even if your system falls under a visual format or some other digital format, it can help to have some written outline of the system. You don't have to do this, but I personally see a lot of value in having these types of SOPs, standard operating procedures, and it also fits really well with my training as a scientist and coming from a laboratory background where all of our protocols were written out and we had to document every step. Because when you want to change a step, you need to know exactly which step and why and what parameter is specifically changing. The beautiful thing about having it written out is that it is something then that you can share with your partner, with other family members, or even a future you when things get so chaotic and you need to refer back to something that's written in black and white. Now, another strategy for scaling is having other people help you to collaborate. But when you do this, what can really help is having a tutorial. Offer some sort of demonstration. Sometimes showing is better than just telling. As I said, it's really helpful to be exposed to systems in multiple ways, whether it's reading it, watching it, doing it, right? Some systems can feel very abstract. So if you want other people to learn your system, they may need to see you in action and not just hear a very lengthy explanation. For example, with my home management system, I have scaled it up so that my kids can also follow it. But each of the tasks on there are things that they haven't yet learned. They are building the life skills to do things around the house, to help me manage the house, right? And so each time a new task comes up, I have to teach them how to do the laundry, how to vacuum the floors, how to wash the windows, things like that, right? So I don't just sit there and give them a 10-minute spiel of how to do it. I'm talking about weeks and months, sometimes a year, depending on how old they are and what the task is, where I will have them join me and they will just watch me. They will just watch me several times. And then sometimes I will have them join in and help me on a particular step of the task. Eventually, I will have them do it and I will guide them verbally. And then that transitions over to me being present, but letting them do it. And I sort of oversee, make sure things are being done correctly. And finally, they can do it while I'm in another room and they can call me anytime they need help. Eventually, at this point, they can do it independently. These types of demonstrations are really helpful. Now, this process is much lengthier with kids because they require a lot of handholding. I don't think you'd have to provide this level of instruction for other adults that you are working with on a system. Now, this third strategy for scaling is, in full honesty, not something that I always follow, but sometimes it can help to wait on automating your system until you have used the manual version of it, let's say a paper version or checklist sort of situation, and make sure the system is working reliably and making the adjustments on the manual version first before you integrate all of your automations. Because I have found sometimes, depending on the system, the automations are harder to change than the manual versions. Now, this isn't always true, which is why I don't always follow this piece of advice, but I'll give you an example where it did save me a lot of effort. As I said, my home management system was first, at its core, a checklist that I would follow. When I wanted to adjust, let's say, the timing or frequency of a task, or even the task itself, it was much easier for me to note that in the checklist instead of doing it after I had everything entered and automated in my calendar, all the notifications set and put into a recurring system that would show up daily, weekly, and monthly. On paper, I just had to make one change. In my automated system, I had to make sure that the change appeared in all the recurring events and also for all the dependent events. And the last thing about scaling to consider is to regularly review your system. Come up with a good cadence. Maybe that's monthly or quarterly to ensure that your system still serves your needs. Now, when it comes to my strategic planning, I will review my weekly tasks weekly, but in terms of overhauling my entire strategic planning system, I do that annually. But many of my business systems that I have in place, I review quarterly. Because I'm in such an active growth phase of my business, I want to make sure that the systems I have in place are still applicable, relevant, and effective for the stage of growth that I'm in. Now, there are many different reasons why you would want to scale your system. Like I have mentioned before, scaling usually means that the volume of your inputs have either increased or that the variety of your inputs have changed. So, going back to my example with my home management system, initially, it really just included chores that I was going to have to do for my home, to maintain my home. But eventually, I scaled it up so it included chores that my kids could also do. Then I started to include chores we would need to implement for maintaining the exterior of my home. Eventually, I started to include gardening tasks and even the tasks related to maintaining and managing our cars. Things like registrations and renewals and state inspections and things like that. All right, it's time to wrap up. I want to recap some of the effective ways to implement systems so that they work for you in the long run. The 4 areas of systems design that I like to emphasize during implementation are the start phase, the run phase, the refine phase, and the scale phase. So your homework is to take your system that you have been working on from parts 1, 2, and 3, and now run it a few times and see if you can address any of the 4 implementation areas that I mentioned. And if you're ready to create systems that truly support your biggest goals and dreams, I'd love to help you develop a comprehensive life plan that includes sustainable systems tailored to your unique circumstances. And if you'd like more information, go ahead and book a free exploratory call using the link in the show notes, and we can see if life planning is a good fit for you. Life planning isn't just about envisioning your ideal future, although that is a really big part of it. It's also about creating the systems that are going to bridge that ideal future to your real life, day by day. So, thanks so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this 4-part Systems Explained series as much as I have. If you're feeling like a good friend, then reach out to someone you know and share one or all of the episodes from this series. This just might be the solution to one of their problems, and I'm sure they're going to appreciate you thinking of them. I love doing this, especially with people I haven't been in touch with for a while, and sharing an episode is a great way to get the conversation going again. And remember, small systems will create big impact for you. So keep it simple and repeatable and go on and achieve your ambitious mom life. I hope today's episode will help you create time and freedom to pursue something you love to do. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and tell other purpose-driven mamas about it. Who knows? You might even make a new friend by sharing a tip. It's all free. By the way, it would be amazing to hear what you think about the show when you leave a review on Apple Podcasts. After all, my passion is to make this a great experience for you. I'll see you next week for another episode of Achieve Your Ambitious Mom Life with Anoki Kapasi.